Hello, beautiful dancer, and welcome to this new video. Today's appointment is with our weekly A Cup of Tea, which is our conversation about soulful and creative fusion belly dance. I'm Lamia Barbara, your host, and I'm so grateful that you are here. I am a professional dancer and dance mentor specialized in Indian fusion belly dance, and my soul's purpose is to help passionate dancers like you master your artistry soulfully. Today's is going to be an interview, and we have a very special guest, Drake Von Trapp from Texas, US. And I would love to introduce him with his own words. Drake Von Trapp is a multi-award winning interdisciplinary belly dancer and emergent scholar based in Texas. His dynamic style is an interplay of American cabaret and fusion belly dance, West African vernacular dances, and classical training in contemporary modern dance and ballet. Drake's combined love of dance and research led him to study dance academically, earning both a master's and a bachelor's in dance. Currently, he keeps busy as a PhD student in performance studies at UT Austin, where he continues his research into the history of belly dance in the US. He shares his intellectual and creative work with the world through touring, teaching, and performing internationally. Today's conversation is so juicy, and it will be so inspiring for all of us in the community, so I can't wait to share it with you. Enjoy and see you soon.
So, recording is on. Thank you so much. I have my tea here. It's not actually a tea, it's a chicory coffee. I needed that.
Nice.
So, thank you so much for being here, Drake. I'm very happy to have you here today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So, I know you're super studying right now a lot for your research, and I know that to carve out some time just for this interview, it's a lot. So, I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I always want to start with the first question, which is like the beginning. Where did your journey in dance? How did your journey in dance started, and how did you find belly dance in your life?
Yeah, so I danced kind of off and on throughout my childhood. I think there's like a really fuzzy, gross VHS tape of me doing a ballet recital when I was 6 years old. Um, and I kind of had the issue growing up where if I was not immediately good at something, I would just quit doing it. And so I didn't stick with anything for very long. I did ballet at some point as a kid. I did cheerleading when I was in like middle school, primary school age. And when I was 14, I dropped out of high school and didn't really have much going on. And part of what my parents wanted was they wanted me to have like connections with other people, and I was very much just alone in my room all the time. And so I went when I was 16, I started at the Isis Belly Dance Studio, which is my home studio. So I started belly dancing when I was 16, and I'm 32 now, so that's been 16 years. And getting into belly dance was kind of a lifelong story, because I'm what's known as a fair child, Faire. So my family started taking me to the Renaissance Fair since I was 2 years old. So I've been a Rennie for 30 years. And in Europe, I know they're called medieval fairs, and it's a very similar concept where it's
Yeah,
an immersive
yeah,
outdoor experience that evokes that feeling of Renaissance, medieval England, knights jousting, maidens mead, well
yes,
met,
yes.
married. Yeah, right. Commedia dell'arte. So I'd always seen the belly dancers at my home fair. My fair, it's in a town called Waxahachie. It's called Scarborough Fair. And I learned that the dancers who performed there were from the ISIS studio, which was very nearby where I lived. It was only like 30 minutes away. So when I was 16, I signed up, and my mom signed up with me, and that's how I kind of got started. It was seeing it at the Ren Fair and then pursuing it.
Yeah. Yeah, we have something similar here as well. And I actually performed in something similar just a couple of weeks ago. So it's still there. Um, and so this is how you sign up for your first belly dance class. But then how did you begin your profession as a belly dancer? How did this develop into after this, as we said, 16 years? How did this become your profession and your love and your research and your career?
I guess that's kind of harder to answer because I think it was one of those things that's kind of hard to put into words. Everything just kind of lined up after that because I think I had been a little directionless. Like I didn't know what I was doing with life in general. Like I said, I dropped out of school when I was 14, and that's usually the time where you're like kind of getting a sense for what you want to study afterwards and what field you want to go into and how you want your life to turn out. And when I stopped going to school, there really was none of that. So getting into belly dance, it kind of made me care about having a life again, if that makes sense. Like
Hmm.
I had friends, and it was something that I enjoyed doing. It was challenging, but I was picking it up really well. And I got all kinds of compliments and stuff at the studio. People liked me, and I was used to being kind of I wouldn't say an outcast. I had friends, but I never really like fit in, I guess. I think a lot of us feel that way. So having a place where I felt very embraced was new for me. And I just kind of never stopped doing it. And then after a period, um, it's what got me back into school. That's another thing is when I started dancing and I was like, wow, there's not a lot of information on men and belly dance and how all of this works. I'd seen several male belly dancers, like I knew of many of them. My teacher, Isis, her first teacher was Bert Balladine. So I knew they had been around for a while. So it wasn't like a mystery to me, but I couldn't find anything about it. And so that's what really, once I started going to events and festivals and competitions and community things outside of my studio, I started kind of picking up on what the industry was like and where the community, the cultural memory was, and saw this like vacancy, like there's all this information missing, or it's all conflicting, and that really inspired me to pursue that, which is what got me into pursuing college and where I ended up now. And as far as like career wise, there's a lot of it I think that goes into it of like being in the right place at the right time and just existing in the community publicly for a long time. Like I've just been
Hmm.
visible in the community since like 2014. So it's been a very long time that I've just been around. So I think after you're in people's faces for long enough, you're just kind of part of the milieu. You're part of what people think of when they think of the dance or like your style or your intersection. So it just kind of all fell into place and ended up working out.
Yeah. I could feel what you said. Like I could empathize so much with what you said, especially when you said that you didn't feel like a person who could fit in very easily, and then when dance happened in your life, you just felt like you find a place where you could feel embraced as you were, right? And this is such a beautiful feature of our community and of dance in general, but specifically, I think in the community of belly dance. And I felt that too. So thank you for reminding me that. It's like you were talking to my younger part, to my younger self. And it's so beautiful to feel that every time I talk with my guests, with other dancers, I can always find pieces of me, and we're all interconnected. So that's a very beautiful feeling. Um, so the question that I have now is a little bit, I don't know, I would love to hear your thoughts about it, especially you as a dance researcher in this field. Um, if you would have to define fusion, okay, now we're talking about belly dance, but now let's talk about specifically fusion belly dance. How would you define it? And if you would pick which are the key features of fusion belly dance, what would that be?
Yeah. The So key element wise, well, for my research, something that's really important is you have to be very specific with your language. And the way language works in the community depends on your community, depends on your geographic area, depends on what country you're in, what part of the world. And it also, for me, like I work, as being a PhD student and having been in school for so long, like a lot of my life is in academia. And the way language works in higher education is also very different from how it works in the community, even if the research is about the community. So
Hmm.
all of those like caveats, the way I've had to define it has been to be specific about my own personal research scope. And so the way I have it broken down is I have fusion belly dance and hybrid belly dance as two separate concepts. So for
Oh,
me,
so beautiful. Mm.
and I'm hoping one day this catches on, but we'll see what happens. Um, so fusion in the states where I am in the United States is what I would call what we used to call tribal fusion here, which we don't really call it that anymore. But it's the style that emerged from it's very American. It comes from all these influences from Jamila Salampour and then from the ATS and, Fat Chance style and waving, popping and locking, all those little influences from hip hop and some other like discrete forms of dance like flamenco and Indian classical dances. Like you see a lot of those influences in what we used to think of as tribal fusion. And it has a very specific like canon of movement. It has a very specific aesthetic, a very specific movement philosophy. Like to me, it's its own kind of dance style. Like it's a form of belly dance that is recognizable.
Yeah.
And um it's really distinguished. So I would say it was popularized primarily like in the early 2000s with the belly dance superstars. So people like Zoe Jakes, Rachel Bryce, Marty Love, but also pre that is kind of what went into it, things like John Compton, Jill Parker, like there were influences that fed into it, but it
Yeah.
really came to the forefront with the belly dance superstarification of fusion. Um, and the look, right, it traditionally, it's not traditional, but like in an orthodox manner, when you think of what a tribal fusion artist looks like, it draws on that very gathered aesthetic philosophy that includes like intercultural mixtures of things like different garments and different types of jewelry and different kinds of ornamentation, and it's a little non-specific. Like you'll have coochie pendants, and you'll have Turkmen buttons and fringe, and you'll have jewelry from Afghanistan and Morocco, and sometimes people wear bindis. Uh, it's a little bit like a little of this and a little of that and a little of this. And there was less emphasis on more glamorous elements like rhinestones, sequins, rhinestone chain, that kind of stuff, that, beaded fringe, which now is more incorporated, but it didn't used to be. So, and it's not required, of course, but more orthodox fusion artists are usually part of some kind of counterculture outside of belly dance. So we look like freaks all the time. Lots of tattoos, lots of piercings, like a lot of the time, hair alternative. They're part of subcultures like goth. Oftentimes are into like the witchy pagan stuff. It kind of it draws in a certain kind of person generally, not the same kind of person that's necessarily drawn to like cabaret or rock sharky or oriental style. And I would say movement wise, what really distinguishes what it looks like, very specifically is characterized by this emphasis on fluidity throughout the entire body, lots of complex layering, that really muscular serpentine style of moving, and which is really distinguishing from things like rock sharky or oriental style or AMCAB, which have their own arm geometry and pathways. So like in rock sharky, the arms are very organic and they're very abstract, whereas in American cabaret, they're very choreographed and they're very specific pathways. And in fusion, there are also very specific arm pathways that look very much like Indian classical and flamenco. Like you have a lot of this, a lot of, these strong high elbow, a lot of the floreo stuff, like that's very characteristic. And of course, the way we do arm waves is very different from some of the other golden era style, right? It's all the same kind of movement. It's just adjusted a little bit to bring in that serpentine quality. So that's what I call fusion, and hybrid is just belly dance mixed with something else, some other dance form. So it doesn't have to be an alternative counterculture thing. It's like salsa belly dance fusion or Odissi belly dance fusion or hip hop or jazz. Like it's just things mixed with belly dance.
That is so, so cool. And I love these discussions because just yesterday I was talking with Kamra and he gave me his thoughts about it. And he was talking about the core fusion with what you said about the fusion belly dance. And just a few weeks ago, I was talking with Antonella Shaina, which is another amazing dancers of our community. And she was talking about this differentiation with what she calls tribal fusion and fusion belly dance. So we all have these different terms, but we're all just going in the same direction of finding this difference and to really differentiate and finding the key features of what has been called tribal fusion, which is different from, as you said, hybrid belly dance. Totally another style. And thank you so much for that. I actually have side like a side memory from what you said about the arms, because when I started belly dance, I was doing like just Rakshaki. And then my teacher at the time showed us a belly dance superstars DVD. And just for a fragment of seconds, I saw Rachel Bryce and she was doing something very snaky. And I was like, what is that? I want that. And my teacher at the time was not very appreciative of fusion. She now is, but at the time she was not. And she was like, oh, this is American stuff. Just don't look at that. But just watching those few seconds changed the way I did movements. Just, I don't know, something in my brain changed it. And during classes, she wanted us to do just regular Rakshaki movements, like ondulations. And I was doing this like unconsciously. And she was like, you're doing like that American lady. Stop doing that. Yeah, but thank you so much for this beautiful insight. So you're using this differentiation in your academic language, right?
Yeah, my research scope is very specific to American belly dance, and we have our two sort of pillars of American belly dance, which is American cabaret and fusion or tribal fusion. So I had to make it clear how fusion is different from other things and kind of justify to higher education why I'm calling it fusion and not hybridized because they don't like the word fusion in academia.
Hmm.
I don't know why, but they like the word hybrid. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give you this one, and this is why this is called that, but this is the reason why it's called this in the community. And it's a lot of give and take. But I also kind of discovered fusion through the belly dance superstars. At the time when I started, they were kind of on the way out. It was 2008, and they were sort of on the road to disbanding. They hadn't quite done it yet, but they weren't run by Miles Copeland anymore, I don't think. Um, but I had taken a workshop with Zoe Jakes in like my very first year of dancing. And then I went to other fusion festivals and met like Sharon Kihara and Ariella and Mira Betts. Um, and that, and I just, it really spoke to me, especially at the time, the vaudeville kind of
Mm-hmm.
like trend was really strong. So it was, and it had like this very steampunk kind of look to it at one point, and I was really into that as a teenager. And so that I just like magnetized to it immediately once I found it. But there weren't any teachers in my area. I could only take workshops occasionally. So it really was a lot of self-teaching before I was able to get in and actually find education.
Yeah. Yeah. I also have a question about the word transcultural fusion. Does the academia like it or not?
Yeah, uh, it's hard to say. Because I know there was like transnational was put forth at one point, and now it's changed. Um, Transcultural has been more common, but it's very much an academic term.
Mm.
And so, like, yes, in academia, they like that term. But to me, it also doesn't mean anything. And that's why
Yeah.
I don't really use it. So, and I won't get too in the weeds to this because it's a big conversation. But when we sort of departed from tribal fusion and we were trying to find like what do we call it now, it seemed like all the solutions were very flabby. It was like, how many words can we use to describe what we do? And in a academic sense, it's important to be able to do that. You have to be able to break it down like point by point. Like I am a belly dance artist who has training in this, and this, and is influenced by this, that, and the other. But when you're on a show bill or when you're trying to sell classes, that doesn't work. And so there has to
Yeah.
be something short and cute that immediately evokes the feeling you want. So saying to me, that's why I just dropped it and I just said, I'm just going to call it fusion because I'm
Yeah,
tired
me
of
too.
saying too many words. Like nobody knows what it means. Transcultural fusion doesn't mean anything. Like doesn't even
Mm.
indicate that it's belly dance to me. It just sounds like anything mixed with anything. So it got so big that now it feels like it's not belly dance specific at all. And I needed to condense it. I
Niche
needed
it
to
down.
narrow it for
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I had the same feeling. Exactly. And especially where I live in Italy, if I would say that in Italian, it's like fusione transnazionale or fusione transculturale. Everyone would look at me like, what? What are you
Right.
doing?
Well, exactly. Like when American tribal style changed to fat chant style, I know that caused a lot of problems globally because fat chants doesn't translate well into other languages. It doesn't tell you anything about what it is. And I was in Mexico when someone was telling me this. They're like, "Oh yeah, we still call it ATS because what does?" And then they rattled it off in Spanish. It's like this almost sounds like a sentence, like trying to say "fat chance
Yeah.
belly dance" in Spanish. And they're like, "Nobody knows what that is. That doesn't sound like anything. So we just call it We just call it tribal style." I'm like, that works. That accomplishes the goal.
Yeah, in Italian is the same. A lot of us are still using the word tribal, even in the fusion world. I think that not only in Italian, but also in other European like countries, there is this still the word of tribal is very common. I think it's also perceived differently here. In the US, it has a history which is different from European, of course. So yeah, it's an ongoing process, but it's fun and messy, and we love that, right? Fun and messy.
Is definitely messy. Yeah, the departure from tribal here has caused some headache in trying to find our
Mm.
footing. I don't think we've really landed anywhere since then, but in the rest of the world, calling it tribal is fine. So, like, when I was in Europe, it was kind of a relief to know that people know what I say. Like, they don't think I'm a horrible person if I refer to it as tribal. So, it worked
And
out.
you know what? I was talking with an Indian dancer of the community, and she was not only her, but a lot of the Indian dancers from the community was telling me, we use the word tribal fusion with pride because we have our ancestors and our tribal lands. We honor our history from India, and so this is like a way for us to honor our um, our tradition as well, because we put a lot of that into this dance. So you see that everyone perceives it so differently, and it's a global citizenship community. So it's a global problem to find one name for everyone fits anyone and everyone.
Yeah. And I don't think finding one term that the entire world is happy with is really the solution. I feel like that's what we keep going back to is like, we need to all call it this. And I just don't think that's going to work because if that were the case, people would all like the phrase oriental dance would win for belly dance. And there's a very specific reason why the term oriental is not going to fly in the US specifically. And I don't want to get like, I don't want to talk
Yeah.
too much, but I feel like it's important that I touch on this for like 2 seconds and then
Yes, of course.
I can close the door.
Just go.
Yeah, because of the departure from the term tribal here, it had a lot to do with so there was a blog that Donna Mejia wrote, I think it was in 2020, that really
Yeah.
broke it down. And I work with Donna Mejia, and I don't speak for her, but like we've talked about this kind of stuff a lot. She was on my graduate committee. We're pretty close. And one of the takeaways that I got from it is the reason the issue with tribal was not because the term itself is somehow problematic, because there's tribes everywhere, right? There's tribes here. But that the idea of a tribe in a more um definitive sense kind of means you have this membership with this group that you can't just like take off. And so I think the issue was more with the fact that there were these, and I don't mean for it to sound like I'm making it all about white people again, but it's like white women coming in and calling themselves an Arab name and drawing tattoos on their faces and putting all this crap on
Yeah, of
themselves
course.
and then calling it tribal, and then they take it off at the end of the day and they can just reintegrate back into the top of the racial hierarchy, and there's no actual tribal affiliation, whereas someone who does have tribal membership, who has a name or like looks non-white, they don't get to just take that off at the end of the day and go back to being Stacy that works in HR, right? So that was
Yeah.
more of the issue, is like it felt that I think the feeling was that there are people who come in, co-opt the glamorous or the exotic parts of what it means to be part of a tribal community for like street credibility or for clout or just for exotification, which can be interpreted as like an Orientalist thing to do. But then they just get to take it off at the end of the day and go be normal again. And
Mm.
it's kind of and they don't put
Yeah.
any effort into it outside of that. Like, they don't learn about the culture, they don't know where their jewelry's from, they don't care about the genocides or the wars or the stuff happening in the countries that they are, dressing themselves from, and they don't care. So that was kind of the bigger issue with it here. And it kind of all happened around the same time as some other big political upheavals, like Black Lives Matter was happening at that time, and the lockdown was about to happen. So it was like this perfect storm of things that kind of caused a lot of this to happen the way it did in the United States. But like you said, it didn't happen that way in other countries. And it doesn't have
Hmm.
that baggage everywhere the way it has baggage here. So it's very messy, like you said.
Hopefully also fun at some point, but
Oh, yeah.
definitely messy. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for going a little bit more in depth in this. And I know, I know it's problematic, but I know also that it's like, like Harry Potter, that you don't name Voldemort because you're scary of that, and just put that on the plate and just talk to. It ease the conversation about it. It's like something we can talk and something we can learn from each other, and something we can discuss, like from a very respectful point of view and from a place of love and ease. So thank you for that.
For sure.
So, jumping on to the next question, I would love to ask you when you are in your creative mood and you want to create your performance, or maybe you are in your, as a professional, you need to create something because you need to present something and you need to create a choreography, a performance, or a piece of costume. Do you have a preferred source of inspiration or a pattern that you choose or a system? What's your way to get into your creativity?
Yeah. So with costuming, um there with men's costuming in fusion, there's no like off the rack costume that's ready and finished for you to put on. Everything kind of has to be collected and sort of pieced together. And it's so and men's costuming otherwise is, it's either custom made, like you reach out to a costume designer and you say, here's $1,000, please make me this costume, or you make it yourself, which is not always cheaper, but is sometimes the only way that things can happen. So up to until like 4 or 5 years ago, most of my costuming was just crap that I had collected, that I put together in different combinations, and stuff that I learned to make myself, which was not great. And it's better now. Like, I've gotten better, but I've only recently been able to afford to pay other people to make more complete costumes, so things look more like cohesive head to toe. Um, but usually when I get inspiration for costuming, it's because I see a costume that somebody else has, and I think, like, how can I adapt this to my body, and how can I troubleshoot it for a men's costume? So I'll usually, if they sell them as separates, I can just buy like a belt and a skirt and a headpiece and figure out how to make a top that goes with it, or ask somebody else, if they can do that. But a lot of the times, like, you can't buy costume separates. Everything comes with a bra, belt, and skirt, and it's like, I'm not going to spend $800 on a costume I can't use half of. So it's
Yeah.
and there are ways you can take bras and adapt them into something that's not a bra, but it is such a pain in the ass that I did it once with a cabaret bra, where I turned it into like a shoulder pad thing. I wore it in Europe, and it looks really cool, but God, did that take forever, and it was way more trouble than it was worth. Um, so right now, my costuming inspiration, most of my work is around like really early fusion belly dance, like 60s, 70s, 80s. And so I'm looking a lot at those elements, which was very cabaret, American cabaret at that point. And then looking at sort of the older belly dance superstar, very maximalist, lots of chains, lots of jewelry, like finding those elements combined with some more of the contemporary trends that do incorporate the more glamorous side of things. Like we can wear sequins and rhinestones now, and it's so great. People make stuff for it. So it's kind of bringing all those elements in. But my style icons are mostly my friends here. So Devin Allfather, she has a shop. She makes jewelry. It's called the Core Corum. And her style is very much that like very glamorous, what we used to call tri-beret style. Kimberly Larkspur, she makes, all her costumes, and hers are stunning. And April Rose also, which a lot of April's costumes she bought made by Kimberly. So like it's all very similar, but all of those more of the modern contemporary fusion style with a little bit of that old school element to it. That's what I really, really like right now. And so I buy as much crap from Devin as I can get my hands on when she is selling it.
Maybe you can send me all these links so that I can put them in the show notes for everyone.
Send links. I write myself a note. Okay. And with dance, with performing, mostly it almost 9 times out of 10, my inspiration is just the music. When I hear the music, everything else comes together in my mind. It's like the costume style, the prop, the mood, the styling in general, like hair, makeup, like it all comes together once the music hits my soul the right way. Now with combinations, like when I'm choreographing things, I watch a lot of old like 70s, 80s, 90s videos of American cabaret and Renaissance fair dancers. And I've cross-trained in a lot of different styles. So I have a bachelor's and a master's in dance. And so I've had to take a lot of contemporary modern dance and ballet. But I've also studied West African dance since 2012. So that's my biggest influence outside of belly dance and all the stuff I did in college.
That's so cool. Yeah. So you're also of the side of the music driven dancers, because everyone is so different. We are dancers who love to start from the idea, or maybe start from a piece of costume, maybe start from a movement. And there are people within the community, we need the music first. And yeah, we too. And I was talking with a lot of dancers, and a lot of us, we need that music first. And then everything it's in our head, it's ready. Like makeup, the costume, as you said.
Exactly. Same, exactly.
All right. So I want to wrap our conversation for today with our last question, which is, if you have like a vision for what is coming next, and what do you see ahead for the dance style? I'm talking, of course, about fusion belly dance specifically. And if you have any advice for the community of dancers and teachers, advices or suggestions.
Yes, absolutely. So, as far as what I see for fusion going forward, I like to start by looking back and making the prediction based on that. So, like I said, I started in 2008. That was almost 17 years ago. And I've seen fusion go through a lot of trend cycles. And when I started, and these cycles, they seem to last between 5, 7 years or so, maybe 4 to 7 years. So when I started, there was what I call like the Brycean era. So that was the very serpentine style popularized by the eponymous Rachel Bryce, but also heavily influenced by Marty Love, Jill Parker, Zoe Jakes, right? So that was kind of, I feel like the earliest trend was everyone saw those little cell phone videos of Rachel Bryce, and like that was it.
Pentaphobe.
Exactly, pedophobe. Yes. And then we got into like we have the timeline. Then we hopped into like the vaudeville era where the Indigo, Le Serpent Rouge, Geisha Moth costumes. There's that one Beats Antique album, Collide, that had the Roustabout and Beauty Beats. Like those songs had a chokehold on every fusion festival.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Every time.
every time. And from there, and that's when I came in. That's about the time when I started dancing, and it was still in that trend when I got into fusion. Like when I started going to Third Coast Tribal, which used to be in North Texas. It doesn't exist anymore. But I remember the Geisha Moth um, costume vendor booth, and everyone had on the bustles and the little tiny jackets and all the ruffles, and it was all, yeah, it's all that style.
Yeah,
The
that's
pants. Oh,
true.
there was the pants. It was like they had the cut where it's like short, and then a
Yeah.
garter, and then the rest of the pants, the garter style
Yes.
pants. Like, people don't wear them very much anymore, but those were such in that era.
They were
Everybody had
so beautiful. Yeah.
them. I used to have a pair, but I don't. I don't really wear those style anymore. But after that, we went to like the Indian classical fusion era where April Rose and Mariah Chappell and Kalina Shakti were leading the charge. You saw a lot of like the foot and leg postures and like the mudras that brought that out. That wasn't a super, I feel like that. I mean, there was the Bombay Bellywood Belly Dance Superstar Tour, which I think is kind of what circulated it, but I don't think it
Yeah.
lasted as long as some of the other trends because you really have to have a lot of training to actually
Yeah.
do those styles of dance. I did Bharatanatyam for 2 semesters in undergrad, and I was like, this
Yeah.
is,
I graduated in Bharatanatyam, so I know what you're talking about.
yeah, it's like, this is so specific. I can't have a pinky out of place. It's really hard. So I got that. And I feel like right now we're in what I am not officially but unofficially referring to as like the Jakesian era, where the eponym being Zoe Jakes, of course, and her style, which foregrounds right now this like emphasis on micro isolations, like twitchy micro isolations, arm waving in the waving, all of,
Yeah.
I can't
A
do it.
lot of waving.
You know what I'm talking about. The hard contraction recoil, which is where she has all those like that stuff and that thing, like that movement quality is very popular right now. Which
Mhm.
is also, you see that in other like big trending popular dancers like right now, like Melly Serena has the liquid fusion thing, which is very influenced by Zoe Jakes, but she has a much stronger waving aspect to it.
Yeah.
Olga Mayos has a ton of
Olga.
arm choreography. Sarah Lynn, she's big in the States. So this style draws heavily from waving, coming from hip hop, and elements from flow arts, like people who use the flow props at like raves and stuff, the perpetual motion,
Yeah, of course.
stop moving. Yeah. And of course now it's, whereas before it was like Roustabout is at every festival, now it's Invicta by Aminati is at every
Oh
festival.
my God.
I know when Rachel Redfern was putting on her Fusion Intensive, she was like, I had to put a moratorium on Aminati. Too many people are dancing to him. No more right now. And I was like, that's fair. So that's kind of like the progression that I've seen. And so as far as where we go next, I feel like we've
Hmm.
swung really far away. Like if we have a pendulum, right? We've swung really far away from foundational belly dance technique and fusion. Like there's so much emphasis on that arm choreography stuff. And the social media algorithm has also really impacted this, I think, because it pushes forward those things. Like it pushes forward this Jakesian style to the front that emphasizes these elements that aren't really belly dance. It's
Yeah.
incorporated, but it's not like a foundational belly dance technique. And so what I've noticed is that a lot of students, especially ones that have come up in the last 4 or 5 years, have really not come from a strong foundational base. And so there's a lot of holes, like there's a lot of data missing in the foundational technique. So since the pendulum has swung so far away from that, I feel like we're about to see a resurgence of like a return to that. I don't know exactly what it'll look like, but I feel like it has to go back towards it now that we've run so far away from it.
Hmm.
Let's see. Notes, notes, notes. So that's kind of what I see for the dance style. Now, as far as suggestions go for dancers and teachers, um, so kind of piggybacking off of that. So with dancers, with students, it used to be that most dancers, most fusion dancers, they started from a more typical belly dance background. Before there were the certification programs and the
Hmm.
abundance of teachers and fusion everywhere, it used to be most of them started from American cabaret or rock sharky or Oriental or Egyptian style, and before venturing out into fusion or before getting into cued improv. Whereas now there's so many certification programs and there's so much online learning available, like online classes. There's also like social media videos where people teach stuff, like a little 60-second, like, let's learn how to do a Maya, right? Like there's that kind
Yeah.
of stuff everywhere. And so what I notice a lot when I teach workshops is that fusion students will be missing a lot of this foundational technique because they don't start with it. They start with cute improv, or they start with like dance craft, or they start with something that doesn't necessarily give you the breadth of what I think of as like a foundational vocabulary. You're starting
Yeah.
off with like this higher level, very stylized vocabulary that is very specific and limited, and it's kind of constrained to whoever's style that is. Um, so if you come in with no experience in any other style of belly dance, you can kind of have a very, what I think of as like a deficient vocabulary, because then I'm trying to teach what I think of as like a basic layer or a basic movement and realizing this is ahead of a lot of people, even though the class itself is supposed to be intermediate or advanced. So if you're within your first 5 years and you've only ever trained with fusion dancers, or you've only ever done cued improv, my recommendation is to seek out fundamental training. And that might mean pursuing like an American cabaret or a rock sharky or an Oriental style teacher. But the cross training doesn't mess up your fusion. I think that is something that I've heard is people say. I used to teach in a like an ATS troupe. I taught workshops occasionally, and they said, "Oh well, I don't want to muddy my fusion. Like I don't want to make it. I don't know. Like they thought that training in something else would make their fusion worse, or like make it not as
It's
not
supposed to be muddy. It's fusion, right?
Like, it's like supposed to make it like not look right. I don't know, but it just gives you options and it gives you more flexibility in what you can do, and that's always a good thing. So that's my main bit of like, if I could give that, if I could tell everyone that, send everyone a DM, it would be that. And with teachers, specifically with teachers, what I'll say is that fusion belly dance teachers is that your students need historical, cultural, and musical education in belly dance and the countries it comes from. So if you're going to call yourself a teacher, if you're going to consider yourself an ambassador, you need to read books, you need to study rhythms, you need to take classes with Arab musicians and dancers, and you need to invite them to teach your students, like invite them to substitute teach in one of your classes even, like if there's a dancer coming through town, you know, from somewhere who has that heritage or who has that training, well, it's really nice to be able to say like, hey, I have a Thursday night class starts at 7. Would you substitute teach my students? And then they'll get that. Then they're kind of trapped because they have to go to class, right? So now they have the teacher
Yeah.
substituting. So it's like a little bonus for them. And encouraging everyone to take those workshops and to take those classes from these people at festivals when they can and to seek it out. You should be able to teach your students to identify rhythms and have a working knowledge of what we think of as like classical music compositions in belly dance, knowing like your big names, your stars, the influences, the formative figures, not just in fusion, but also in other styles. And it's not about knowing everything about everyone, but it's about being able to speak intelligently and holistically about belly dance and about the history and where it comes from and who's important. And even if you don't know everything, because of course nobody does, being able to direct people to where they can find teachers or information about it. Like for me, I can't tell you a whole lot about Egyptian style, but I can tell you people who work there and are educators there and who have been dancing there for a long time. And I can say, you can go talk to those people and ask them questions and take their classes, but I can't personally give you a lot of information about it. So that's what I would say. That's my long spiel about it.
Thank you. It's so valuable. A lot of what you said, it's so valuable, and everything you said, it's amazing. I love the story, like the history of fusion with all the trends and all that you said. And I think the pendulum is going back, as you said, definitely. I think we're swinging so forward and then there is a comeback. And I can see that already. There is this, I can see what is happening in the community is this need for a revival of the old school fusion. So it's already happening, what you said. What you see ahead, it's already there.
Yeah, I noticed Michelle Bett out in Japan. I know she's been posting a lot of videos of her doing like homages to Le Serpent Rouge. And I know the stuff
Yeah,
I've done about like John Compton and Hobby Roo has gotten popular. So I
yeah,
feel like people are getting they're being enticed back towards it. Like they're feeling the nostalgia and they're wanting to return to that. So I'm looking forward to when that is the new trend.
yeah. You know what made me think? I know maybe this is totally out of context, but I am a mother and my son is now 15 months. And I was studying the regressions of children, and they told me that I was just studying this idea that of the elastic band. So the child goes further away from the mother or from the parents in their development, and then they feel this need to go back so that they can extend even further, and there's this elastic happening and like the swing. And maybe this is also what is happening in the development of this style. We need to go back to find and nurture ourselves again in this, let's say, like the mother of fusion, like the roots, so that we can get the next step and make the next step and see where it comes. The unknown, right? It's there for us. So maybe it's out of context, but it made me think maybe it's connected. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And also what you said about the foundations. And I think this is interconnected again. We're going to go back and we're going to see the foundations again. I know when I started, there was a lot of suela happening. The
Mhm.
suela technique was a lot of there. And almost all of my dance friends from that time when I started were like level 1 suela at least. And so you had that strong foundation, the very first foundation. But nowadays it's much different. So to go back then, go back there, even if it's not Suela, but it can be, as you said, Raksharki or any other Oriental style, that would be awesome. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
All right, my dear. Thank you so much for this very lovely interview. And I am going away from here with a lot of inspiration and a lot of awe for your work. So thank you for doing that, and keep uh, keep giving us your amazingness, because I'm following you on Instagram. So I can't wait to see what is ahead for you as well in your research.
It'll be good. And I'm hoping to make it out to Italy soon. So maybe we can hang out at some point.
Yes, please. Please let me know. In warm Sicily, you're mostly welcome.
Yay. That'll be great.
Thank you so much for watching this video and joining this beautiful conversation with Drake. If you loved this video and would love to see more, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because every week I share more contents about soulful and creative fusion belly dance. And if any of these topics inspired you or sparked your imagination, DM me on Instagram. I would love to chat with you and connect with you more. See you next week, and keep dancing.